Hello, everyone. I am just getting this all set up here, but hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Estelle. Thank you so much for joining my live on the Aries full moon. This is October 20th, and I am just so excited. I don't know about how all of you feel today, but I'm really curious how you're all feeling today with this energy. The Aries full moon is all about just fire and and energy and really like starting new dreams or finishing old ones, finally having the energy to complete what you started, and what have you always wanted to do or say. And if there's something that you've been wanting to say or wanting to do, today is going to be the day where it's going to be like, oh, I have to do it. It'll just kind of boil over. So you're going to have a lot of that energy today. It's going to be just a big emotional day. I know Aries people, they have all that fire, they have lots of emotion, lots of emotions, like tendency for inflammation, a tendency for but also lots of grand ideas. They're the visionaries. So today is a beautiful visionary day. And I have you guys showing up in the chat. Awesome. Hello. Hi, Tamara. Hi, Melanie9. Awesome. Hi, Kelly Christine. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad you're already chatting, and just put any of your questions into the chat. I will just go through them in order. I have a lot of stuff that I just want to talk about on my own, but I really love getting the questions because that kind of pulls the energy just forward, and I get to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So, and if I say something and then that spurs on a question, please ask it in the chat, or even if you have a comment, that's just totally welcome here. So, yeah. Intense energy. Oh, and Kelly, your natal moon is in Aries in the 5th house. Yeah, look, that is some emotional creativity. You have that with moon being kind of like your subconscious, your inner self, your inner world. Being in Aries, it's like a hot moon. They call it like a fire moon in the 5th house of creativity. You're probably some sort of creative. You're happiest when you are creatively expressing, is what I would say. And then right now, I mean, the full moon just being right on it, it's like, do you have projects that are unfinished? You probably have the energy to finish all of them, right? Or you're on to the next new dream, because today is just all about, okay, if you haven't already said it or done it, it either comes out today or you have the energy to do it. So I love that. I love that for you guys. Also, full moon in Aries is going to be, oh, acting. Yes. Is your passion. Of course. Perfect. Yeah. It's like you get that it like creative channel, and just you step into that energy. Um so something that I would say, oh, and you might even probably like be booking something around now, like new or big, that's kind of today would be like a a day for that. But when I it's funny that this full moon in Aries um, is happening right now. It's happening in the fall. And something that I just posted about, I kind of posted it in all my socials, is Goddess Durga. And Goddess Durga had her puja for my husband's family just recently, and the whole goddess energy with this Aries moon, when it comes to, we don't typically connect Aries with the feminine, but it is something worth connect the moon or the sun to the feminine. We think that the moon is the feminine, and it is, but we can tend to kind of just put things into their categories, and we don't always think about feminine, and the energy that comes from the what a female warrior would look like, what that would actually entail, which is has to do with a lot of self work, emotional mastery. And so there is, that yin quality there. But the goddess and the moon being very just all over this energy this whole week today is just really what I have been getting. And so, hi, Melanie, your Aries moon in your seventh house. Yeah. And I love that about your dream or your guides. Yeah. And I've been hearing that from a lot of people. I really think that this energy, especially like an Aries full moon, it's almost like things can break through, ideas can break through, visions really can break through. It's a perfect time for dreaming, for visioning, for visionary ideas. And yeah, it's interesting. Feeling connected and love on a deeper level is really what that is needed in society right now. If I were to kind of talk about what could really help society, it would be that. So I really feel like that is coming forward for everyone. Like um what helps us feel connected? And the feminine energy is something that also is really good at helping us feel, that unconditional love, that connection, that really it has been divorced in mainstream fundamentalist religion. The idea of the feminine when it comes to just God. So I think getting back in touch with that is really what we're learning from scratch right now. And the the goddess energy of Durga, from my experience, my experience has been that. And also, I mean, this is, the priest was even saying it at the puja that I went to, and it's really all about her story is that these gods had these demons running rampant, an army of them. They couldn't do anything. Supposedly, no man could. They brought their best. These were gods. So they created a woman. They created a goddess who could. They got around that stipulation that no man could defeat them by creating a woman. And she was able to, that's why they say at the end of the puja, happy victory. She was able to, it was the victory of light over dark. And really what that is an internal process. So another big thing I wanted to talk about today was psychic protection and the idea of what psychic protection is really has to do with our inner world. It's really an internal process. It's an internal work. It's it's light working ourselves, essentially, would be psychic protection. It's like light work yourself. So that whole idea, and I'm looking down at my notes here today just because, I mean, with Aries on the moon, I'm just like, I want to talk about this and this. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't forget anything. I'm trying to make sure I don't run too fast. But the psychic protection, and when it comes to, how do you slay an army of demons? Like, what is that even? What is that story even good for? How can we connect with that? And really it comes down to the inner work, emotional mastery. It comes down to self-knowledge. It comes down to neutrality. And all of these things help us create a layer of psychic protection. So psychic protection works on the area of resonance. So when it comes to things like psychic attack or, seeing things or being afraid, really resonance is what tells us where we are going to resonate to when it comes to other beings. So essentially, Goddess Durga was able to be so clear. She knew how she felt. She was neutral. She was healed, essentially healed. And that idea can be kind of nebulous. Like, what does that even mean? But she had sat with herself long enough. Essentially, that idea would be, someone who had sat with themselves long enough to know who they truly were and to have ridden the waves of their old traumas for long enough to come to a place of neutrality, and a neutrality that sticks, that holds. And that neutrality is what creates the resonance of psychic protection. And obviously, psychic protection is it that occurs whenever we link ourselves up with the divine. When we link ourselves up with, with the higher beings. It can be higher aspects of ourselves. It can be an idea, our idea of God. It can be with gods or goddesses, angels, the archangels. Linking yourself up with higher beings raises your vibration. It kind of raises your resonance out of, kind of like the resonance of where, Durga's army of demons was coming from. She was able to raise herself above it. And neutrality is a big piece of holding that resonance above it. So I don't know if any of you guys have ever had like a scary, experience or something that has ever freaked you out. But if you're here and you're watching my channel, most likely you have, because you're most likely psychic. You're not probably going to be super drawn to my channel unless you are psychic yourself. So I'm like talking to every one of you. And so that that piece is also another piece of the puzzle where when it comes to psychic protection, if you're very naturally psychic, you tend to kind of light up on a radar that, it's like the angels will come to you, but if you're having a bad day, it's like the creepy things too. So you kind of have to understand, and it's an empowering concept. And I never mean to say, sometimes I shy away from this topic because I don't want to like victim shame. I don't want to make people feel like embarrassed, because I see so many new age people being that are what I are just new, or maybe spiritually immature, you could say, being like, that's dark. They're very dark. And while while that can be true, it could be true, maybe they are dark, but oftentimes it's really I will see often it's the darkness in them that they're projecting onto someone else. And so we really do have to kind of take ownership and take this message as an empowering one. Take the idea of resonance being psychic protection as an empowering idea, rather than just feeling guilty or like, oh, my resonance was bad, because that doesn't help. That actually goes against my point, right? And that's why it's a difficult topic to discuss, because I don't want to put guilt. We can so easily, especially if we're already kind of programmed with a lot of guilt like I was as a kid, it's easy to just feel guilty, and then your energy is just bottomed back out again there. And so yeah, the um I see, definitely the idea. I really think that any self work we do is work for our psychic protection. So what I would say is, it's basically like we all have like a baseline that we naturally rest at, we naturally resonate to, like, say it, around here. And then if we're doing lots of spiritual work, lots of meditation, what that does is, by clearing things, and usually it feels uncomfortable, but it's a release, we're able to raise that baseline resonance. And so it builds up, and we're able to hold higher and higher levels of energy, of frequency. And we really do that by sitting with ourselves in all of the ways that we are uncomfortable, in pain, unhealed, or also the good stuff like in joy, in bliss. And we sit through all, we feel ourselves in all of that. And that's why, I talk so much about vipassana or in meditation where you just sit still and you don't move, because that just is an easy way to allow yourself to rise up. There's the pain, let's stay neutral with it. Practice of staying neutral is also something that builds with your resonance. So someone, who has a high natural resonance is going to be a very naturally neutral person. They're not going to get super rattled if someone cuts them off in the parking lot. They're not going to get super, they're able to have good communication with their spouse. They don't just kind of fly off the handle all the time. I mean, everyone has bad days. But and that's one thing also, it's good to remember sometimes things happen. Like, for example, some of the scariest things that have really happened to me in my life happened on just kind of bad days. They happened on days where I was just like, "Nah." And I wasn't it wasn't necessarily like I wasn't doing a lot of work at the time. I wasn't meditating. So I'll just tell you guys one of my stories is in one of my old apartments, and we were there, and I had had a newborn baby. I was exhausted. I was literally exhausted, and my husband had to leave for the day. It was like a Saturday, and I was just exhausted and tired of weeks, alone with the baby. And it was just kind of where I was at. I was nursing. I just kind of had to suck it up and do it. But I felt hopeless. That I remember that morning feeling hopeless and feeling like my heart just sunk. I had kind of despair. Really, the emotion of that could be described as despair. And I really just was not looking forward to the day. I didn't have any good hopes for the day. I had no high hopes for the day, for sure. And it was, early morning, and I was just like, I felt bleh. I felt alone. So I I remember standing in the kitchen, looking up, and there's a wasp up in the kitchen. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, now there's a wasp inside. I will just I'm gonna mess with that later. He goes and he lands on the cabinet above the stove. It's like a high cabinet that I never really use. He lands on the edge of it, and I'm like, okay, I'm watching you. Stay there. So I go, put the baby down for his nap. I leave the room for a few seconds, a few minutes, come back in to my kitchen, and that cabinet is standing open. And I am stunned. I'm standing there like, I can't really process what I am seeing, because the cabinet is standing wide open, and these cabinets don't open on their own. They're heavy, kind of heavy duty, and the wasp is still on it. The wasp is still sitting on the edge. So I knew that I would not have opened that cabinet because I would not have wanted to put my hand that close to it. I wouldn't have wanted to mess with it. So I would just remember standing there like, what is going on? And I just felt super creeped out. I just felt creeped out fear. I remember grabbing my baby and leaving the house like for the day. I'm like, I'm out. We're leaving. So can any of you guys tell me why that happened? What did I do wrong there? What happened here? Can any of you guys guess maybe like why this happened, how this happened? It really was because I felt so alone, because I felt so like I just felt so bleh and so despairing and unhopeful that it just allowed me to kind of pop down. I was just kind of falling down, down into just this. My emotions were in this lower astral resonance with that amount of despair and that kind of like unhopeful idea for my future. So that is really when I kind of came into resonance with something that could just kind of come along and mess with me. And when that happens, what happens is when we kind of pop down, and it happens to all of us. This is really, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not like new age guilt here. It's just something good, I think, for us to know is when I kind of like resonated down there, then I leave myself open. I leave myself vulnerable to fear being introduced. So essentially, these beings were like, let's introduce some fear. Um, and see if this holds. And of course it did. So of course so not only was I feeling bad, but then I like latched right onto this fear and I just, I ran with it. So that that coupling that whole all of it together was kind of like the perfect storm to just that was exactly kind of what lower astral entities want. They want to find vulnerability. Like once you're down there where they can see, they're like, oh, there, right there. And then they can try to introduce fear in any little way that they can. They're just trying to lower the energy even more so that you're down there at their level. I mean, that's just how it happens. And so I was like, okay, I'm afraid. Like, I am full of fear right now. But really, what, and I don't, in that instance, it can coincide with the land that you're on. If you guys are having, like, if you've ever had something happen in your house, psychic people are usually kind of keepers of specific land. We just tend to kind of manifest areas of the world, like areas of properties that kind of need a little bit extra energy, like a little bit extra healing. Like our psychic people kind of tend to foster areas of land that have had a lot of pain, and it's just what happens. And we kind of tend to live in haunted places. If you're a medium and it's like you don't know you're a medium, you'll probably be living in haunted houses till you figure it out. So that's just been my experience, and my experience working with people is that it's just like anything else. It's a resonance. And once we kind of okay, I'm understanding, I'm receiving the message, I'm receiving the connection here. I'm kind of learning, oh, okay, I need to take some mediumship classes, or I need to like get into psychic development and start understanding, or I need to go to therapy. Like, I'm like, I got into therapy and worked on my emotional world. All of these, once you kind of do what's necessary, then the contract kind of ends and you can move on. Like you can move, or you stop having the same experiences. Often people will tell me like, I keep having the same scary dream or the same experience that's weird. And once we level up or we do the extra work, therapy, emotional, whatever it is, then we tend to kind of leave the lesson behind. We check it off. So that is my resonance. That's my story when it comes to, because nothing like that had happened there before. Like I had always felt very protected. I'd always felt very safe there, but my emotional resonance, my emotions, were calling the shots there really. So that is, and Tamara, that's a good point about the thought patterns. Like when we watch our habitual thoughts, like I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts. I got that from the book Limitless, by the way. That is not my own coin, but the automatic negative thoughts that I would have, like I would suddenly be like, oh, why am I feeling so bad? Like I would just be standing in the kitchen and then be like, oh, What was I just thinking about? Okay, I was just thinking about, this and this and this. So I started catching my thought patterns and the thought patterns that were creating the emotional states. So that's why meditation harps on the thinking and bringing it back to the breath, because it's trying to train that mental muscle into focus so that it's not just running away automatically and creating emotional states un unchallenged and just uncontrolled emotional states. We meditate so that we can keep our thoughts clear and therefore our emotions. So, what I started really noticing for myself, and it got easier when I first started doing this, I felt like it was so hard where I would tune in and be like, how do I feel right now? I would like monitor my own emotions. And I would be like, okay, this is really hard. I was not good at noticing how I felt. And I was not good at honoring how I felt. I would run from them. I would go to coping mechanisms, distractions, self-medication, really anything else other than feeling that feeling. And so once I realized that I didn't have to do anything really, I didn't have to like sit in the feeling forever. It is feel it to heal it is a thing, but you're not actually supposed to like wallow. Okay. There is a difference. Really, all I would do is kind of be like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxiety about this big change that I want to make because my intuition is saying to make it. But my body is being like, change, new. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know where I'm going to be, blah, blah, blah. So it's like the body is saying, the emotions are saying one thing, even though intuitively, I want to make a big leap. So that energy is important to kind of notice. And all I really had to do was, oh, I'm really anxious about this. I just had to kind of notice, honor my body and be like, okay, you're trying to send me anxiety. I'm scared. I'm scared. Once I stopped trying to like repress the fear, deny the fear, pretend like I wasn't scared. Never works. Tried it. Doesn't work. That is when I realized, oh, okay. And for some reason, then it just dissipated. It just dissolved. That's something too, is to really get in touch with what dissolves your fear. When it comes to psychic protection, what dissolves your fear? Get in touch with that. Can you dissolve it on your own? Like, do you have and it's a pretty advanced ability. I'm sure, you guys can do this. So can you actually be like, okay, I'm feeling the fear and I'm doing it anyway, or I'm feeling this fear right now and I'm going to shift, my thoughts and my attention to something that I do want instead, or what I would do was I would have, so, okay, this is what I'm afraid of. And it kept coming back. And I'm like, okay, I started making a deal with myself. Anytime that fear came up, I would focus on this one thing that I wanted to manifest. So I would kind of turn my fear into what I wanted to manifest, and it was a quick way to manifest. I kind of actually used the charge of my fear. I used that energy because fear is a strong charge. That's why, they talk about it so much in manifestation, that I would use that charge. Like I would still feel like the tingles in my body from the fear, but I would be putting my thoughts on something that I wanted. And I would be like kind of pushing that energy over there, and it would lift my energy. So it would be like, and I would feel better. I would feel different. And I started really practicing, for me, I know I've talked about this with you guys. Um, music, like beautiful music and good music and good art really dissolves my fear. And so consuming good art or getting into beautiful art, that really dissolves fear. Venus, the energy of Venus really dissolves fear. So whatever that is for you, it can be anything. It could be, calling a friend. It could be it could be meditation, it could be going on a walk, it could be, for me, it's also taking a shower. showers, and also going on drives, because you get in the car and you go into alpha. So you get in the car and you go into alpha, and you kind of you're moving, you're kind of like leaving things behind. You're moving, you're crossing waterways, and you're using like you're changing the earth's ley line. You're moving your body around, and you're in alpha. You're getting into the more psychic right brain intuition brain waves that kind of produces a change and can kind of shake off um, kind of stuck emotional states. So that is what um, I I would do. I would do also. So when it comes to, say, you're doing psychic work and you're wanting, psychic protection because you're doing this, you're intuitively developing, or you've joined, like a psychic, mediumship group. Like I just started a mediumship psychic, development support group. Like when we do this work, how do we set, the intention for psychic protection? And really, it's just that. It's really just your intention to connect up, to raise your frequency, to just really feel whatever it is for you that is your highest and best. Maybe, with so many of you guys that work with me, the first thing my guides do is take people straight to their higher self, to their spirit guides. We call in the guides. The guides help us they help us see the past lives. They help us see, the childhood memories. They're the ones that help us. They're in charge. They lead, they facilitate the healing. So whenever we kind of connect up and hold that intention that this is the highest and best energy, the guides then, your higher self or your guides, then, can allow in, okay, grandpa needs to speak. Their aunt needs to speak. They're able to kind of titrate the energy for you. And even if it's like someone's abusive ex-husband, needs to come in and speak, it's still okay, because you have your guides there. They have the whatever energy, that person, if the person is of really low frequency and really all that's left behind is kind of like their addiction, then your guides will kind of filter that for you. They kind of keep. And so when that happens with me, it tends to be either the person's guides will kind of give me the information, or my guides will give me the information about them, rather than that person, just because there's a resonance, there disconnect. There's an energy disconnect in the resonance. So that connecting, yourself first with your intention of your highest and best, connecting to God or source, whatever you want to call it, with your guardian angels, that provides psychic protection, because it lifts us into a higher frequency. It helps us feel not alone. One of the things that I noticed coming out of the church, or coming out of fundamentalism, like leaving Christian fundamentalism, was that I really didn't connect myself to anything else for a while. All I knew was that I didn't want that. And I kind of swung from, one end of the spectrum to the other. And I swung to like into atheism for a while, and then I was kind of agnostic where I didn't care. And then, but that also really can leave people vulnerable. I mean, it left me vulnerable there for a while, just because I was acting out of reaction and out of kind of, trauma. I was acting out of trauma, and just it was an unhealed space, and I hadn't connected, I hadn't gone and gotten any regressions, or really I hadn't seen any psychics or done really any spiritual work yet. I read, I was reading Eckhart Tolle and things that helped me kind of get into spirituality, things that really resonated much more than fundamentalism or dogma ever did. But it wasn't, I was still kind of in a vulnerable place, because I was in a place of rebellion and resentment, honestly, toward my past and toward, what I labeled Christianity as. which is not what it should be. That is completely a long, long topic. But that sometimes, if someone is kind of swinging out of that, um, coming out of the church, or kind of, okay, what is this new age? What is this intuition thing? What is this intuition development thing? You do have a lot of wounds, really wounds, and then you're popping into the psychic area, and without the intention of a raised vibration, or maybe with a lot of wounds, or a lot of unhealed emotions, maybe a lot of resentment. It can kind of just leave that person vulnerable, and that's really where I was, in my 20s, largely. So that is another, resonance piece that I find so important. And that's why connecting people with their guides and their higher self, and having a personal experience with that, is one of my priorities, is for that reason, is for it to build in the psychic protection. I don't tend to focus on psychic protection, because the energy of protection kind of insinuates that you need it, that we need protection. Whereas I tend to really fall into the philosophy of, just knowing that I don't really need protection, because I'm always in the vibration of my higher self, of the highest and best. And I feel like when I do kind of feel like I need protection, that is when I'm in more of a fearful state. And that's just me. I don't know. You would have to kind of assess for yourself. But that whole idea of protection but it is important. I think it's very important. And if you guys haven't already done Gigi Young's course on psychic protection, I learned so much from that as well. Like, after I did my interview with her, I'm like, okay, I am taking this course now. Like, I want to know what that is. And so she really breaks down, like, she breaks it all down very, very beautifully. And so I would super recommend you do that, if psychic protection is something that you are feel like you need, or feel like, you're struggling with. But that I just had so many experiences with, just kind of being like, having a bad day, and then just seeing, then something psychic happening. Like, on a bad day, I would inevitably have kids' toys going off, in the other room. And it's just because, like, I kind of left myself vulnerable. Like, and so there was, like, a creepy kind of tone after that. And then it's really easy for it to be a downward spiral. So that's something that I have heard several of you guys mention. And it is totally, you are not alone. That is totally something that I have had happen. And in one instance, it was actually a little boy ghost. It wasn't actually something negative. It was just something that was kind of like trying to get my attention, and I had to be like, oh, okay, it's you. And so that's another thing when it comes to intuition development and mediumship and getting into this realm. You will have, or just a lot of you are just naturally psychic. This is just going to be your life experience, your life should be your life. You do kind of have to just understand that there might be a lot of things that kind of just come and go. You might see a lot of things, a lot of different people, beings, whatever. You might not see them, you might just feel them. I know for me, I had a lot of, trauma early on, and a lot of medications, early on, that I didn't see. I would just, and I remember being like, I don't know how to fall asleep. So I just put on blinders and black out. So I stopped really looking, but I could still feel them. And so that is also a very common thing, where we can feel things. We feel like we're being watched, but we don't really want to look. We don't really want to see. And so that is something that's often why I recommend, mediumship, because it helps us feel like, okay, it doesn't have to be scary. It's not always negative. Sometimes it's just grandma. And so when I would notice, then, okay, I would keep super neutral. And sometimes it would be something negative. Sometimes I'd be like, oh, that creature is totally black and it's black as night and it's just looking, trying to do this weird, thing in front of my shower door. And I'm just, I don't know, like what is okay. And but staying really neutral and not letting myself go into fear about it. I'm just like, oh, okay, entity. Okay, go on, please move along and just staying neutral, saying move along, and then just kind of clearing your space with your intention in that way. Like, please move along. You have the power to do that. You have the power, or even if, sometimes it is like a person that's just like they kind of wander and lost. And I'm like, I don't have the time to talk to you right now. I'll talk to you tonight. I'll catch back up with you tonight. And they usually stay back. It's when they don't feel heard. It's like people when we don't feel heard or when we feel triggered is when we're like, hey, listen, listen, listen. It's really the same on, across the veil. They do the same things. If they're not feeling heard and they can see you're a medium, they just like, ugh. That's why sometimes if you walk into a house or a really haunted house or a really haunted land or space, and suddenly your energy just drains because you have all these ghosts trying to get your attention, like, hey, and then it kind of, they have to use our energy, ghosts, deceased people. So it's not like entities, it's not even negative per se. It can just be the crossed over people. They kind of have to use our energy in order to connect. And so if there's a lot of them around, you can really feel drained. And especially if you have low boundaries, if someone doesn't have, a lot of boundaries in their life and they kind of want, for me, it was, I really wanted to be liked. I didn't have a lot of good boundaries. I wanted to be liked. And so that didn't really set me up for success in the mediumship world because I didn't have natural boundaries. So that is something, to think about too. When we have natural boundaries in our lives, we tend to create it that ripples outward. It's like us telling the universe, that this is what I will and will not put up with. And that ripples outward into your psychic space too. So people with very good natural boundaries, like my husband just has really good natural boundaries, like with, other people, like people don't rattle him. He doesn't need to be liked. It's like, it's it's a wonder. I'm like, I don't get this. But he also has really good boundaries, in the psychic space. And so those people that are psychic, really another word for psychic is just people that have thin boundaries naturally. We have naturally thin boundaries. So often you'll find like a dovetail kind of between psychic people and people that are empathic, or they people pleasers. They want people to like them because they feel so much energy. They know what other people are thinking and feeling. And so we want to, and sometimes we're taught to manage it, but sometimes, if you can manage it, you get rewards in life and it can turn into something that's unhelpful. So yes, Kelly Christine, changing I'm in need of protection into my spirit team's got my back is a great way to look at it. I love that. Exactly. My spirit team's got my back. That's really just all that you would need. And Lindsay Elliott, hi. I totally feel this. I'm so glad to see you here. Yeah, so definitely I remember when I first started doing like a mediumship group, learning, about ghosts, my teacher was like, the dark doesn't exist. And I was like, like, ooh, say what? That has never been the luxury of my experience, but I love it. I am going to stay under that bubble. I am loving it. And that idea, that philosophy really did create a bubble of protection in her circles. She was just like, nope, the dark doesn't exist. And I'm like, I'm here for that reality because that has never been the luxury for me. So that I just thought, I've always thought that was really funny, but it did work. There was never anything, it was always a very safe space. So I just thought that was funny. But yeah, Lindsay, definitely like the whole idea of boundaries. And whenever, you hear, especially because Lindsay Elliott speaks so well on the topic of narcissism and kind of just narcissistic abuse and just really getting back out of that gaslit space. I mean, so often I'm like, psychic. Anytime someone's like, oh my gosh, I had this narcissistic, relationship, it's usually a psychic person. It's usually an empath. No one else would really be able to put up with it, and that narcissists are, born out of trauma, so that they tend to be drawn. It's kind of like a magnet, like chemistry is. It's a funny thing, it's our wounds really, um resonating, and so we kind of tend to draw like narc I you know I don't I definitely have had experiences in my past with narcissistic men. And so it was just like I just didn't know any better and I didn't have any boundaries and I was just drawn to him and he was, drawn to the fact that I would put up with him. And I was just it was funny. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's psychic ability. It's innate empathy. It's being an empath. And so that's why I think I started out, making videos on like empath 101 and, like how empaths can really, understand what they are, and that mainly because of my past, self not knowing what I was and just thinking I was kind of damaged and broken. And so that's why I feel really passionate about talking about things like psychic attack and seeing scary things, or even like just this, having narcissistic abuse. The silver lining really is that we tend psychic people aren't nurtured in this society, and we tend to really not know. We tend to kind of we're running around blind. We tend to kind of think, oh well, then we feel guilty, like, oh, it was we're just really wounded, or there's something really wrong with us, and we never really understand how to turn it into our superpower. We never understand what that superpower is. Society won't tell us that. Like, we won't get that information anywhere. So that knowing that the reason why scary things happen at night is because you're psychic. The reason why narcissistic abuse kind of is happening because you're an empath, and then taking that forward with you into your new future is what I is always my intention. Like, that's just the if I could tell it, like, everyone, I would just want to tell everyone. I want to tell the world, I'm like, you're psychic. Let's develop it. So yeah. Okay. Lindsay, exactly. I didn't know and had no boundaries. And now I have a superpower of awareness. Yes. Or it feels like a superpower. It totally is. And it's like, fool me once, right? It's not going to happen again. So that, or once we're aware of, these of boundaries, and then it really is an antidote, to, or something that really is part of healing in general is cutting cords, that might be cutting out old, obviously it's old things, coping mechanisms that no longer work because we don't need it because we're healing. But oftentimes it's cutting cords with people, cutting out people that no longer work. It could be, that's usually when people, in spiritual growth, that's when they break up, or, that's when, they get new friends, or whatever it is. You're cutting cords, you're cutting off old coping mechanisms, old people are moving out of the house. All of these things are creating the correct boundaries to grow and to hold a higher resting resonance, which is natural inbound psychic protection. So, yes. So, hi, DM. And I am not, okay. Hi, Olivia. I'm not sure who this is, but now I'm kind of thinking I know, but I don't know. Okay. How can someone know for sure if they're an empath versus highly sensitive? Thank you. That is such a good question. I love that question. I would say that highly sensitive is a mainstream word for empath. There, I said it. I think that I remember being in college reading the HSP book, the highly sensitive person book, crying. Like, I felt so seen. Like, just, oh my God. Like, finally, something was written for me. And it was really only able to make it into the mainstream because it was written by, like a PhD, and it was about highly sensitive persons, not you are psychic, because that would have just been put in the New Age section, which I also frequented. So, yes, to answer your question, empath and highly sensitive, one and the same, really. A highly sensitive person is just going to be someone who feels so much, so much. And that's what an empath does. An empath feels beyond their own feelings, they feel into their surroundings, like into the world around them. So it really is, I don't know. I guess there could be highly sensitive people that aren't necessarily empaths. You do get more sensitive the more someone meditates, the more spiritual work people do, the more intuition development we do, the more sensitive that we get. I mean, I suppose there could be people that still are not necessarily empaths, but you're not going to get an empath who's not highly sensitive. It's, all empaths are highly sensitive. And then highly sensitive people, if you're resonating to well, here's what I would say. If you're resonating to highly sensitive, or you feel like, yeah, I'm really sensitive whenever you read about that, I would absolutely, you are most likely an empath. So yeah, DM. You're an empath for sure. That is it's just obvious. So the whole idea, but I love this idea. I love this question because there are so many things like in mainstream now that are really kind of psychic topics, like the HSP, highly sensitive person. And now, people are talking, we just have more awareness of the emotional world, like Brene Brown's, what makes you vulnerable makes you beautiful. It's really, I mean, that's a really high kind of spiritual task there, is to, that's what meditators work on. They work on the ability to feel those vulnerable feelings. And we work to allow them and to stay neutral and allow that to happen, because that's when we move through blocks. That's when we dissolve fears. That's when we clear stuff. That's when we heal. That's healing. So it's just a very mainstream thing. That is what, spiritual people have been saying, for years, in just a different section in the bookstore. So I love that. Yeah, thanks DM for asking. And Tamara, I was always told I was too sensitive. Yes, that is the thing that children get told, you're too sensitive. So we just shut down. We toughen up, we're like, okay, I'm not going to feel that. So anytime a kid is told you're too sensitive, they're like, oh, they take the cue that feeling is not okay. And to being in touch with the feeling and expressing feelings is not safe, is not okay. And so that's when the art of covering the feeling begins, right? And that's, in adults, that's essentially addiction. So that's what I would say about that. It basically, it's setting us up societally. We're kind of being set up by being told to toughen up. We're setting ourselves up for addiction and for kind of unhealed states, and then never really. So what happens is, when we don't feel our feelings, when we're tough, we build walls, and those walls, just keep getting smaller and smaller. And our world just starts getting smaller and smaller. And we're never able to actually kind of break out and know who we are, what our dreams are, or make the big, bold moves necessary to chase our dreams. And our dreams are probably not what the person who told you to toughen up would want. So that's the work. That's really what everyone in society is kind of all doing right now. Everyone's waking up to it. It's getting out of the baby boomer, kind of era, and into, okay, we have to create something new, which means people aren't going to be happy, and we're very sensitive, and it's just it's really the pivotal point that society is in right now. Is we're trying to create something new on the backs of an age and an era where it was all about, keeping everyone in line and keeping everyone kind of the same, kind of the factory mentality. And now we just have more free thinking, and that's taking us kind of into the new age. And so that is causing really everyone to have to go through the same initiations kind of at the same time, maybe in different ways, but the same initiation of pushing through their fear into something new, and pushing, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Collective awakening. Exactly, exactly, exactly. Yeah. And so that's really what the collective awakening is. I feel like it's kind of one big, psychic, psychic awakening. We're all kind of bursting out of the program. We're all like, okay, we were told this, but this is what we feel. So I'm going to go for that. Even though I feel afraid to jump out there, I'm going to do it anyway. And so that's what really the world is doing. And the earth is also kind of being shaken into it also. So this kind of takes me into, I was going to talk about, astrology and life purpose. So I want to show you guys this. I haven't posted about this yet. Actually, I don't know if you can see that. They might have, it might be flipped. I don't know if you can read it, because for me it's all backwards. But a year ago, last year in 2020, I got certified in astrology with the American Federation of Astrologers. It was a 9-hour test. So that has been something that I have been doing more and more of, and I really haven't talked about it too much, just because, schooling and taking a test is, you want to make sure, like, I always dumped everything after I took a test. I wanted to make sure I actually knew it, actually remembered this time. So it's been slow, and been really, working on, just using it. I've been using it and seeing people for astrology readings. But one of the things that I really love talking about. And hi, leave '06. And yeah. So one of the things, the 9-hour test, I had to erect a chart by hand. You have to draw it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Thank you, Mimi 7914. Thank you so much. So that was something that I just kind of set my mind to, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. But one of the things that I have noticed, thank you, Tamara, is with everyone, I want to talk about everyone's purpose, and astrology really shows that. And so I want all of you to know. So I want to talk about, that for a second. Thank you, Kelly Christine. Thank you, Tamara. So the life purpose is, when it comes to life purpose, kind of overarching spiritual, karmic, and evolutionary purpose, that would be the North Node. When it comes to career purpose, when it comes to what you're, kind of here to do as a career, and what the public will see from you, which is different really than kind of like the karmic undercurrent. They go together, but these are different, points on the chart. That would be, what the public sees from you is your midheaven. So it is fascinating, Tamara. So the midheaven is the top point of the circle, and your north node is, it's a little symbol of the north node, and it's going to be anywhere on the chart, that wherever you have a north node and a south node is going to be opposite. So the north node is kind of where your life is headed. It is the purpose that you are working on. It's what you're working on in this life. Your south node is what you've already mastered. It's kind of your karma. It could be past lives. And so getting to know what your north node is in can be so powerful. And then understanding what your south node was in also can tell you what you've already mastered. We tend to want to fall back into our south node, and we're not supposed to. We're supposed to use those gifts but pull ourselves into our north node, kind of go for that. We're going to be less comfortable in our north node because it's our lesson. We haven't mastered it yet. That's what we're here to master. So we kind of have to focus on that. The more energy we put into that, then the better, we feel, really. So hi, Menagerie of Magic. I love your name. I have to go, but I'll have to rewatch. I was wondering what people can do when they feel like they can't fulfill their life purpose. That's a really good question. That whole idea, you know, feeling like they can't fulfill their life purpose is an interesting feeling to have, you know? I would say that if someone feels like they can't fulfill their life purpose, then one, I would wonder if they know what their life purpose is. And that would be something that the North Node can really get you into. It can let reading about what your North Node is, that can really help understand, the pitfalls and the strengths. We all have both. But feeling like you can't fulfill your life purpose can sometimes be just like a block. It can be an emotional block. It can be something that there are blocks to healing. Like sometimes we can be doing everything right. We could be taking all the supplements, all the herbs. We could be, listening to all the best people. We could have the best friends and family. But if we're still, drinking a lot of alcohol or whatever, insert vice here, that is going to be like a block to healing. And so that sometimes that block will really only, the really, it won't necessarily like derail, or throw off someone's whole life, but it might, it'll come out in other ways, like not feeling enough energy to fulfill, their dreams, or it just starts coming out in sabotaging ways. And so I would say if someone feels like, if they felt like they can't fulfill their life purpose, I would ask and see if there, was anything in their life that was maybe sapping their energy, were they involved in energy that, was just, draining somehow, or maybe the person had just not really gotten into their life purpose fully. Like they either didn't know what that was, or they just sometimes if we still have a lot of trauma, it can be hard to really trust our life purpose. It can feel daunting, or it can feel overwhelming. And so sometimes really just getting back to basics can really help. That just getting back to, making sure we have, those basic chakras covered, our survival needs, so that we can have, the energy to fulfill the life purpose. Or it might, let me see, I just really feel like that if you feel like you can't fulfill your life purpose, I think emotional work, really honoring your feelings, honoring your emotions, can really help. Getting to know why you feel the way you do, getting to know, what your emotions are and why, what thoughts kind of bring them up. Look into self-limiting beliefs, or old patterns. Sometimes even sometimes just hypnotherapy can be really helpful, where hypnotherapy is, when it's good, it's really just like a guided meditation. And listening to it every day can help. I really started out by doing this, helped me kind of reprogram my thoughts, my automatic negative thoughts, my ants. So that's really what I would say to that. Is looking into the North Node, emotions, looking into the emotions. And hi, SM. Hi, good to see you. No worries. And hi, Claire Gordon. I am so happy to see you both here. So yeah, um let's see. Then next, after the North Node, look into the midheaven. So the midheaven is at the top point of the chart, and it's basically on the cusp of your 10th house. The 10th house is the house of career, fame, public recognition. It is really what other people kind of see as, the career, what you're going to be doing. So I would see what sign is on your midheaven and what planets are in your 10th house. You know, you would also want to look at what planets are around your north node and south node. You would want to see kind of what planets are around your south node kind of tells you about past lives, and then around the north node will and what houses they're in will tell you about, where your purpose is. And menagerie of magic, another thing too, they're saying is sometimes we feel like we can't fulfill our purpose because of past lives, and past life healing could be necessary. And that's when past life regression is really helpful. We get in, connect to our guides, and we kind of look at where we've been. So it's kind of like inner child work, but you keep going. You keep just it's even earlier, it's even older than in the inner child. And it's a piece of us that resonates with where we are now within this life. And if we heal that, if we heal kind of what happened in the past, then we can bring forward into the future a brighter emotion, a more of a healed and whole self. We feel better. We feel more whole. We feel more integrated. We're no longer haunted by, the old trauma that doesn't make any sense. It's like, didn't I had, I remember what happened in my childhood. Where is this from? Like, why do I have a fear of fire? Oh, because I had a past life in Salem. That kind of thing happens all of the time to psychic people. I'm like, I should just like put on my website, like past life witch regression. We're just gonna go back to the past life where you were that healer, you were that, wise woman, that witch, and we're just going to clear that up. We are going to heal that piece and move on, because for you, Menagerie of Magic, so many people have, you know, or really anyone, so many people have these past life healers that, have kind of turned into the wounded healer, because that was on purpose, especially in those darker ages. And now we're here to heal it. We're all back. The witches are back. The healers are back. Doing it again. We're all back from Atlantis. We all remember what happened, or we are starting to remember what happened, and we are doing it again, and we've got it this time. So that is what I really like about regressions, is it can kind of get into past lives that help us more fully step in to our purpose, because things that we did in our past life helps us understand why we're interested in the things we're interested in now. It helps us understand our interests, our resonance. Yes, we are back. So that is yeah, that I'm just kind of blew through everything I really, really wanted to talk about. So, did I answer everyone's question? And did anyone have a question about? I know I kind of told a, a ghost story, but did I get? Did anyone have any like questions about any of that? Because I feel like, let me just look here. Yes. Well, I love that. Yeah. So Lindsay Elliott said, I'm all for sovereignty and breaking free of this fallacy labeled society. It's so true. I mean, I we tried. I mean, I really always want to come back and honor the what the founding fathers tried to do with American society. So it's just really, you can feel that they knew this was coming, and they tried to set us up, as well as they could, like as well. It was just, it was, the founding fathers were people that were channeling selves way ahead of their time, and it's like not even they could like quite live up to the society that they created, in their personal lives. I think like they would say, we need to abolish slavery, and then they had slaves. I mean, just kind of ridiculous things. But, that aside, what they did, what they tried to set up as a society, as American society, as a free society, religious free, separation of church and state, so that we didn't recreate what was happening in, Rome and Europe with a priest king, with a pope. Like we kind of have like a more separated situation here where we have more freedom, freedom of speech, freedom, just freedom. A society built on freedom allows spiritual sovereignty. They really wanted to build a society where people were free to live out their karma. All those guys were in, like those secret societies that, now they're like all, all Freemasons are bad. And I don't see that. I think that there are factions within factions. And I do think that much of, a lot of Freemasonry may have gotten kind of just taken over. But originally it was something that originally Freemasonry was something that it talked about people's, they talked about karma. They talked about kind of helping humanity. Their goal was, to help humanity fulfill their karma. And so, then you get into power and power struggles, and then things just can kind of devolve from there. And then factions within Freemasonry, it's a completely different topic. But ultimately, what they wanted to do was to create an American society where everyone was free to fulfill their own karma in their own way. That's a really amazing. We haven't seen that since Atlantis. Like we had come back to an Atlantean cycle with that idea. And I think the founding fathers knew that. I think they were, involved in something, like maybe some kind of hermetic thing, where that's why I think there's so much like Egyptian, stuff that they had kind of connected to their things. But I feel like they really understood, the cycles of time, and how we should create something beautiful, in this new land. How they did it, that isn't the best, obviously. Like that is not what I am saying at all. Like I have a lot to say, a lot of criticism, honestly, about how they did it. But I think that they were channeling something so much higher than them, that it was like higher beings trying to come in, really speaking to where we are now today. And so you're trying to take 2020 and, manifest it back then. There was a big disconnect, and the people's frequencies just weren't there. And so it was like, so you had a lot of hypocrisy, and but now it has been corrupted. It has devolved, the kind of this idea of it really being a fallacy is very true in a lot of ways. Like the whole idea of a democracy has largely gone off target. The whole it just that yeah, I read somewhere that America was prophesied for some specific purpose. I just can't remember the purpose. That makes sense. And Kelly Christine's spiritual sovereignty is self-empowerment. Exactly. For sure. So that idea of freedom being where you have the ability to be spiritually sovereign, that is an empowered state. That is empowering the people. That's why they built in checks and balances against corrupt government. Obviously they could kind of see it coming. That's just the tendency, especially there's a tendency what they had seen in Europe, that's for sure. So they were trying to kind of build in safeguards against that. And America is prophesied for some specific purpose. It's like the new Atlantis. They're looking to be able to do it better this time than they did in the past. So we do really have that choice of where we want to take it. Do we want to recreate genetic disasters the way we did back then? That's basically what took us down then. So here we are, making the same mistakes again. So it's one of those things where I'm like, we have the critical mass though this time. There really is. Thank you, Lindsay. There really is a um it's already, I fully see it as it's already happened. It's already like a victory, but that doesn't let us off the hook. We still have to do the work. Just because, I mean, it's like the founding fathers, and it's really like all of you. Just because we're psychic, we tend to kind of see things way over here. We're cart before the horse. We tend to kind of see the end game, and then we realize, oh wait, we have to get there. Like, we have all of this to get there. That happens to me in my life all the time. So that's kind of what I'm seeing happening with, with the New Agers being, or even like maybe some like QAnon conspiracies, which I really do not like QAnon. I feel like QAnon stuff is kind of mocking me. Like, I maybe there's a root of truth in some of the things they say, and it's just so I really, I feel that way about several things, but the um let me get back to what I was saying. So many Americans live past lives in Atlantis. It's true. It's like we're literally all back. We get, this is the cycle of, the second chances, where we get to do it again. We get to move through this initiation. And so even though we do feel that victory, we do feel successful already, because it would ripple out into the universe. I mean, it did ripple out. It did affect all of our neighbors, essentially. So we get, this time, it's almost like we have the backup, and we get to try again. So yeah, everything's changing for me, but not many are on this train yet. So it feels like the very, very beginning. Yeah, we are, literally changing humanity, and it's at the DNA level. It really is. It's at a really deep level. It's at the level of transmission. And so the way that I feel that is, when it comes to, changing humanity, is really just staying as sovereign as I can and doing my work as well and as deeply as I can, right? I mean, sometimes it's the act of just like breathing deep with my kid rather than snapping at him. It's the littlest things, and it's really our inner world is an act of revolution. It really is at this point, because and I even like I cut kind of cords with so many people that I just can't really, I can't, I'm not going to please, or I don't really resonate with. And so I have really built like this really beautiful community of supportive, like-minded people. So I don't live in a state of despair, or I don't live in a state of like, oh, humanity is on such a, they're in so crazy, because my reality is kind of built with just really beautiful, like-minded people. And so that's really what I get to focus and meditate on. That's what I manifest. And that's another, reason why cutting cords and creating boundaries is so helpful, is because we then are clear to focus on a higher resonance. It's easier. You can keep a crappy boyfriend and grow spiritually. It's just a lot harder. So that's, what I would say about that. And it is coming back full circle. Yes, we are changing humanity at the level of the DNA via compassion, via, transmission, just being out there, like being in the world, even though we're not, necessarily super part of it. It's just being here. Being here is the transmission. And it's in acts of compassion. Like, I read a really triggering article, I think it was yesterday or today, and it was making fun of conspiracy theorists, and how conspiracy theorists, think they're satanic baby eaters. And I got really triggered. I was like, the piece of me that was like kind of jealous of those that don't have the luxury of knowing that that is the reality. I just was like, but then, I let that kind of just settle in. I'm like, wow, I'm triggered. I'm triggered. I'm jealous that they don't have the luxury, that they have the luxury of thinking that that is conspiracy theory and they don't believe it. And I was like, I don't wanna burst their bubble. I knew, like, there was a side of me, especially because full moon in Aries today, there's a side of me that wanted to, like, get on there and be like, "It's true, it happens," but really, ultimately, a higher level of compassion is understanding that sometimes people are not ready for that. People are not ready to go deep into conspiracy theories and into the truth, really, of the darkness, because they might not have done their own dredging, their own personal inner work, and then trying to put that on them, trying to, I hear people like, "Wake up, you're sheep." And I'm like, that isn't helping. Like, that's just, it goes against, it makes us look pushy and dogmatic. When I came out of, like, I'm like, I swung out of that. I'm not going back into dogma, into conspiracy theory dogma. So just like letting them have, letting people have that, we can't believe in Pizzagate, that, because it's traumatic. It's traumatic to go there, and not everyone can. And I think that's okay. Like, I think that really some of the bigger transmissions are me knowing, I mean, I do think that satanic ritual, I know satanic ritual abuse is real. I experienced it as a child, and I love deeply the people that think it's all fake. I wish it were. I truly wish it were, and I don't want to be the person to burst their bubble. In another circumstance, maybe I can be, but in that, I have to pick and choose. Like, this is my trauma coming out. This is my trauma talking. I don't need to be projecting that onto them in this moment. I can channel this into something else, like into this video with you guys, in an appropriate, an appropriate thing where I have people that can actually, that know what I'm talking about, that have the energy to know the to know to get into that deep traumatic work, to get into, we can really only go as deep into conspiracy theories as we're able to go into ourselves. And that often comes with lots of past lives, being old souls, or lots of past lives where we've done this inner dredging, this inner work. So that's, I mean, that's a thing. So, SM, what was up with the planets last few weeks? Life has been extremely challenging on all fronts. Anyone else experiencing this? Yes. Yes. A long-term phase of ripping the band-aid off. Yeah, that's a very good visual. Very good way of putting it. Maybe taking the blindfold off, for sure. Um, so yeah. You're making such good points. So when it comes to, let's see, what's going on. Yes, so Pluto was in opposition to the sun. Yes, that was definitely, you're definitely feeling that, for sure. And then we have over here, well, I mean, the sun opposing Pluto doesn't last for weeks. That's going to be a more, that would have happened like a day or two. Really, that would just kind of like, they come into orb, and but the sun is so fast moving, that wouldn't necessarily stick around. But what we do have coming up in, um, specifically around December 21st, is going to be Saturn square Uranus. And so that was on us, before, earlier in the year, but the last few weeks, I would wonder, as so I would wonder what was on your specific, for the past few weeks. I would wonder what was on your chart, because I'm sure something was hitting you. Something was probably hitting you, and just, and okay. Your 27th birthday was also the 18th. Yeah, so the sun was just lighting up. The sun the sun was kind of opposing Pluto and then lighting up your sun. So it was like a kind of like a double whammy, depending on when the sun opposed Pluto. But Yeah, I definitely coming up, we have that Saturn closing in on Uranus. Saturn is the past, Uranus is the future. They're both father figures, right? I mean, think about two very different, masculine energy trying to contend with each other. That's what we got. They're fighting. And so that comes really up in December. So I'm just wondering about travel this year. I don't know. There's already been some strikes, which I love. I'm really glad that that is happening, that people are, just really standing up for, sovereignty. Where there is risk, there must be choice. So I really feel like um, that's probably going to happen into the holidays, but there is something like there's going to be a change. There is something definitely that I thought was going to happen this week on this moon, and I think it's really just more strikes that have kind of really happened, and or people speaking out. Really, it's like what haven't you said, what have you been wanting to say, that all kind of explodes today on the societal level. On the personal level, people can explode too and just blah, like let stuff out, or people can just kind of be really mad, and that, or it can just be really creative, and we're just, ooh, we have all this energy, and we're finally able to finish what we started. So it really it's a volatile time. It really is, especially in society right now. This is a volatile week. Next week also might be volatile. Just the energy feels like, what's happening? I don't know. I would watch the stock market. I don't know. Like it's not really if, it's when at this point. Stock market, housing market, I would look at December 21st for that. So Jupiter and Mercury, also SM, Jupiter and Mercury just went direct on Monday. So another thing, kind of just to add on to whatever aspect you had, it's like a truth volcano. Yes, Kelly Christine. Yes. So Aries full moon is a truth volcano. I love that. Yes. But SM, whatever aspect you had, you also, Jupiter and Mercury were also going direct. So kind of old, just for the past several weeks, both of them were retrograde, which was beautiful. It kind of gave us time to go back through and really, like, what do we really want? Go back, finish unfinished business, go back and manifest, go back and, like, what do we really want to manifest? What do we really want to say? How do we really feel? What's the truth? And then they both went direct on Monday. So if contracts weren't working out, if technology wasn't working out, like the fine print will kind of come back and get you, just, it could be anything mechanical or technological just not working out. Contracts need to be read with a fine tooth comb in Mercury retrograde. And so then Monday hit, and it's like, okay, now it's going back direct. It's business as usual. So sometimes that can be a little crazy too, because we're like, woo, okay, whatever we left off, at the beginning of the month, we're picking back up. So that also just happened. Let's see. Q feels like cattle panels. I like that. It's very true. It's um, very ridiculous. Yeah, there is a root, and that's the best way to tell a lie. It's true. Yeah. So Kelly Christine said, recognizing if it's a pattern, then there's a problem. So all of those are really, really good points. But I think I am done. And if you guys don't have any more questions, then I think that is a night for tonight. I have basically just with a full moon in Aries, I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I always kind of do that. I am a Gemini. I do just kind of tend to talk without taking any breaths. So I'm going to take a moment to catch up, let my Wi-Fi kind of catch up to all of your, questions, and see if there's anything else you guys want to talk about before we go. So I drink my tea. Um, So yes, I kind of started it out with goddess Durga and just ended out as kind of like a goddess party. I have so many women. It's a women's full moon circle. We just did tonight. But the idea of, emotional mastery, the idea of really healing via the emotions, manifesting via the emotions. We manifest with our emotions. So the more healing that we do, the more spiritual work that we do, not only will our psychic protection be better because our resonance will be better, we will also be manifesting more quickly, more efficiently. Manifesting works off the emotional states. So, learning to really get into those beautiful emotions, learning to dissolve the fear, learning to kind of move away from fear and feel, kind of point our thoughts in something that is focused and uplifted. And, that, like I mentioned earlier, like that Venus energy, getting really into um, beauty and the arts and whatever it is that is your passion and your purpose, these things really help. That This is how we manifest. Holding that feeling of gratitude for abundance. That's Venus. If I had to sum up Venus, in a sentence, it would be gratitude for abundance. And so those people. I'm sure those women that are just always so grateful and they're just always abundant and it just kind of exudes. It kind of just comes off of them. Usually their secret is gratitude. They're usually very grateful and very uplifted and very happy. Like they have just that glow. And so that glow is something that, we can build, we can practice, we can work on building that resonance and holding it and allowing it to be something that we hold. And so that would be something that I feel like I have gotten from meditation. And that has cleared my space quicker than anything else. I remember leaving a retreat once and driving in my car home. It was like an 8-hour drive. And I had my first negative thought in days because a cop pulled right in front of me, didn't signal. He kind of cut me off in the left-hand lane. And I was like, oh, look at that cop, didn't signal. I had like my first bleh, cop thought. And immediately upon thinking that, his car flicked up a piece of like trash off the highway and hit my car really hard. And I was stunned. I was like, oh, like, oh, sorry. Yeah, I shouldn't have thought like my automatic negative thought. There it is. It wasn't until I stopped at a gas station that I realized that he had knocked out my turn signal. I literally sent him a thought about you not using your signal, eh? And he I mean, it was just instant. I was instantaneously manifesting. And so that's really what that is just an illustration. Once you really meditate, you start seeing your thoughts in real time. Until I was really coherent, until I was able to kind of know what I was thinking, I was just kind of in chaos. I wasn't noticing what I was manifesting. I wasn't seeing cause and effect. But meditation slowed my thoughts down enough. I'm glad you guys are laughing. Yes. Yes. I was able to slow my thoughts down enough to notice, oh, there is a cause and effect to our thoughts. We are manifesting and creating. And with my nah thought, I received, an inconvenience. I had to change my blinker. So but I'm always grateful, by the way, if something happens to my vehicle. I'm always grateful for manifesting karma on my car vehicle rather than my body vehicle. I see like, or my house. I see these things as like vehicles that we drive. Often I will clear karma through my car. My husband actually told me this. He's like, "Yeah, I clear my karma through my car." And I was like, "What? Never heard of that." That is, I don't know, but it's actually brilliant because you're like you're using like you're one vehicle removed, right? It affects you less if all I'm having to do is pay some money, to repair my car. that's better than my health. That's better than, other ways. So I like it when I'm paying off karma through, the vehicles of inconveniences, like, just having to pay this out or having to pay this. I'm always like, I'm just glad that I am paying off, I'm paying off karma in this way. Um, this is something that my husband is really good at being like, I must have needed to pay off some karma. I must have owed, something there. And so that keeps my resonance high when it wants to kind of be like, meh, I have to pay, or it just keeps me in a good emotional state, understanding that, okay, I'm still moving forward. I'm not letting this hold me back. I'm continuing. I cleared some karma. Still going. So just gonna give you that one. So Claire Gordon, yes, give us one quick self-care idea intuitively. Oh, and you're a Gemini too. Yay. So self-care idea. So what I am into right now, I'm totally obsessed with right now, is smells. I have actually, for the first time in my life, started craving smells, like beautiful smells. Um, yeah. So self-care, an idea is having, for me, it's like a ritual that I do every night with essential oils, and I do not sell essential oils, and I do not buy from people who sell essential oils. I'm kind of weirdo like that, but I'm also a mom and I'm very easy target for essential oil. And I'm like, no, but really like neroli and the ylang ylang. I don't know how to pronounce that, but those beautiful smells have turned into a self-care ritual for me, as well as like washing my face. Like I turn it into like like an Egyptian bath ritual, or really that is what has been like a grounding force for me lately, and just smelling and just really letting a smell take me into bliss, like just, or a flower. And there's not that many flowers around now, but my mother-in-law had gardenias, and I would smell those gardenias and just be like, I'm in heaven. This is heaven. I don't know. I don't know where this was before. Before, essential oils were fine, but now it's an act of self-care. I see it as a way to like massage into and really nurture my feminine energy. So, really nurturing that feminine energy is something that I've been into lately. I have been following Venus through my chart. So, every day I kind of notice like where Venus is, and I notice how she feels. So, I'm really trying to pay attention to how Venus affects me, and just right now it's just smells. And yes, earth, like sitting on the earth and just I have a wool blanket, and I cover it with a like a cotton sheet if it's hot, and I just lay directly on the ground to just get some sun every day. Self-care for me is sun. I know that is not for everyone, but for me, on the ground in the sun, with my good smells, it's my happy place. So that is my idea. Yeah. Someone else has cleared some karma through their car. It happens. It happens. Good for you. Good for you. You're moving on. Hi, Destiny Luna. Yes, that resonates. I have been so afraid of connecting with guides due to past life and current life trauma. Yeah, but I know I've done enough inner work that I'm safe to. And I love that. That's beautiful. A beautiful idea. So, yeah, definitely safe to. And it's something you can do in meditation. Just close your eyes and ask for your guides. Take some deep breaths, get into a calm state, ask for your guides to come forward, ask for your highest and best good, ask for your higher self to come forward. Just notice what you see. Just let it be easy. Just trust and let them come forward, and just trust the first thing you get, and just see what happens. And then, the next day you can take it further. You can see them again, and see what's different. So you can allow it to be like a daily meditation or like a practice where you get in touch with your guides. So, oh, I love that. I'm obsessed with cedarwood too. Cedar, yes, and pine. Like the pine, just pine smell. Cedar and pine, I don't know what it is, like pinon wood. I have a wood burning fireplace that I am in love with, and just the smell of the wood and everything. So, yes, so it happened to you today. You having some good thoughts about the car, not having good thoughts about the car in front of me, and a small rock hit my windshield. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder if this is a lot more common than we realize, right? It's so interesting. So, oh, and Lindsay's sitting in the dirt right now. That's perfect. You're like moon bathing in the full moon. I love it. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It has been so much fun to talk to you all and just to share and talk about all kinds of different things and psychic protection. And it has been so much fun. And I hope to talk to you guys again next month. It might be around the full moon time again. It'll probably be on, a Monday or a Wednesday. So just stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next month. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Thank you guys. Bye.